I'm Kris Ambler. I'm the workforce lead at the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy. I work in the policy and public affairs team. My role, broadly speaking, is about bringing our members, counsellors, psychotherapists, and therapeutic coaches into workplaces and to raise awareness and the profile of workplace counselling and the benefits for employers and employees. It's an interesting question. Well-being in the workplace is essential for economic stability. As we know, we've heard a lot about that lately, particularly in light of the ever increasing sickness absence figures we've seen in the country, particularly since the pandemic. They've increased exponentially. But well-being also serves as the foundation for personal health, workforce retention, and organizational performance. So there's a whole load of reasons why organizations should be concerned about well-being and mental health in the workplace as part of that. Not all economic, of course. To achieve this, workplaces need to take a sort of systemic and evidence-based approach to protecting, promoting, and supporting worker health and well-being. And that involves understanding workforce needs and implementing interventions that both enhance well-being and address work-related factors that contribute to ill health, mental and physical. And of course, financial and social, part of that sort of that broader model of well-being, one that encompasses all those different elements. Supporting individuals to stay well and to work to their capacity, regardless of condition or disability or life demands. That requires equipping employees and managers with the knowledge, the tools, and confidence to manage health and work, effectively, including your mental health. It also means creating compassionate, people-led policies and practices that enable people to thrive in their roles. And by fostering healthier workplaces, organizations can, reduce absenteeism, improve workforce sustainability, play a proactive role in reducing worklessness, of course, is a big policy driver at the moment with the current government, and contribute to broader economic and societal resilience, really. So that's why employers should care about mental health of their employees as part of that much wider piece. In terms of what we're seeing in the sort of the landscape of provision in the workplace, a few things really. A really important awareness, I suppose, a shift in awareness to the importance of prevention. So not just bringing in counselling, psychotherapy, coaching, therapeutic coaching, that is, into workplaces in response to problems that have occurred either through, a variety of reasons in workplaces. There's much more awareness about the need to implement, a variety of support measures for prevention as well, to help ensure that workers are happy, supported, productive in the workplace. And I think that's something that's playing out nationally as well in the language of the government policy around mental health. That it's about coming out of primary care, less about that sort of interventionist approach, and it's more about prevention. Prevention's at the heart of it. So it's about going downriver, really, and stopping people falling in and getting into difficulty. Of course, people will still require that sort of that specialist intervention, that specialist support. But if you've worked to build in the resilience of your people and your organization through good, preventative measures, it's much easier to do that. Another big shift is the recognition that EAPs, can't provide that one-stop shop. They just can't do that. They've been overwhelmed with demand, both in terms of the volume of referrals they're seeing, but also the complexity of cases as well. And EAPs just weren't really set up for that. The sort of 6 to 12 session model of counselling in EAPs is really being stretched and challenged by people with multiple complex needs in the workplace. And we can look at a variety of reasons for that. There's the post-pandemic fallout. The legacy impacts of the pandemic are still very much with us in terms of their impact on physical health, long COVID, and mental health at the same time. And the way it's exacerbated existing conditions with some people. And then we've got the cost of living crisis as well, which is causing considerable strain for many people who are struggling to balance finances alongside their physical, mental, social, financial well-being. So there's a range of things that are happening that have put more pressure on services, and they're struggling to cope in many cases. What that means for employers is that increasingly they need to provide more specialist, nuanced support as part of that wider support package. So for many people, the sort of standard EAP offer will be perfectly acceptable, it will work. But for more and more people, that won't be the case. And it might be that, we need to contract or employers need to contract differently. They might need to bring in specialist providers. And we've seen a big increase in trauma-informed services, for example. Now, one time you may have seen or you may have associated trauma in the workplace with occupations like, emergency responders and blue light services, because they typically tend to be involved in crisis level, work interventions, or people, working in, situations where they're faced with things that are particularly difficult to contend with. But actually, we've seen certainly over the last sort of 5 years, and since COVID, these things have either been accelerated or they've come to light more, perhaps. Is across professions we're seeing more and more need for trauma-informed therapy. So if you look at the retail sector, for example, the British Retail Consortium released a report a year or so ago which showed an increase in verbal and physical aggression towards shop staff. Subsequently, we've seen, policy come in that makes physical aggression and aggression towards retail staff a specific offence in itself. And, alongside that, we've seen, increase in theft and other things that have really challenged retail sector workers. And as a result, we're seeing more organisations, more retail organisations investing in trauma-informed counselling services. And this is true across a number of different industries, I think, that have all been impacted by the pandemic in different ways. You've got people who are now expected to pay, 2-3 times as much for services, for products, than they would at one time. There's a lack of availability quite often, and people's expectations aren't met in terms of service, because quite often employers may be recruiting or employing less people, and people who left the workforce perhaps during COVID didn't return, or simply through cost-saving measures because of the cost of living crisis. So that's created this perfect storm, if you like, of people who are unhappy with the service they're getting. They feel they're paying too much for things, and they're bringing those frustrations and taking them out, for want of a better expression, on those frontline staff. So we've seen that. We've seen an increase in a need for trauma-informed services, and we've seen that in the rail industry. We've seen that in retail, the public sector, right across the piece. and these are, these are people who aren't paid, to be in those situations. They're now undertaking conflict resolution training, alongside, the sort of thing you'd expect people in retail, for example, to be training in customer service and things like that. So it gives you an idea of the changing landscape. On top of those issues that I outlined, the cost of living crisis, and the sort of post-pandemic legacy impacts, you've also got, war, climate anxiety, political upheaval and change, lots of division, I think, as well, in the sort of social space in particular. So these are difficult times for people, and we're seeing that manifest in businesses. So they're just a few of the key things. We're also seeing a shift towards more digital, generative AI-based services as well. There's been a huge amount of those coming into the space, which again, that implies change for organizations, for therapists working as workplace counselors as well, and need to think about, how they differentiate and, the change in service offer, because, they're very attractive to employers because they tend to be lower cost, and perhaps to a degree more flexible, but not necessarily really as suitable across a whole range of issues that an individual in an organization might be facing. So to an extent, that's a challenge as well as an opportunity for, for the counselling, the workplace counselling sector. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting time. We've seen the government launch another consultation on what workforces and what employers would like to see from the government. And, there's a real sense of an opportunity here to better connect employers with, traditional, the sort of public sector services, and to contribute to that broader piece, which is about helping the economy grow and to help society move forward. So yeah, there's been a lot of change in a very short space of time, and I think, employers, workforces, to their credit, have really stepped up. So that's been positive to see as well. We've gone past, to an extent, having to, pound on doors and promote the message of the importance of health and well-being at work. I think far more organizations, get it now. They understand it. For many, the challenge will still be, but how do we afford this? How do we pay for this? That is an interesting and broad question, and it is one that employers, particularly SMEs, will struggle with, because they understand the imperative to invest in workplace well-being. I mean, there's a whole plethora of reports. McKinsey and Deloitte and Business in the Community published fantastic research saying, this is the economic value and the return on that investment. But it's that investment that is the problem for many when they're trying to balance the books at incredibly challenging times in terms of cash flow and available resources. So that would be the first message, really, from me to employers, is to really get under the skin of what it is you need, because there's lots and lots of people and organizations out there who quite happily take your money from you to deliver things that you may never actually use or need. And that starts with doing some groundwork first in your own organization. And there are plenty of tools and things online that help you do an audit, and whether that's a stress audit or whether there are specific drivers you're already aware of, the chances are you've already got data in your organization that will help you make that evidence-based approach. So to think about that first, think about what data you have to support the case for investment, and where it needs to be allocated. We've seen so many initiatives. Every month there seems to be a new, it's Men's Health Month, or awareness of one kind or another. The danger can quite often be, and from the best place this comes from quite often, it's with good intention that organizations will go out and invest heavily in the next big thing, without really thinking about how it's going to be operationalized and what the benefits are going to be for the organization. And it starts with conversations. It starts with conversations with your workforce about what they would like and what they would need, and to make those conversations as open and transparent as possible, such that you're reducing the likelihood of employees sort of shutting down. Because quite often, if an organization turns around to their workforce and said, "What are you struggling with?" people don't often want to talk about it. They'll see it as a career limited move, or they don't want to look, particularly in a climate where you might already be feeling under threat potentially. That the organization might be struggling. Many people will be coming to work and perhaps hiding the extent of the problems they're facing. So it's about creating an environment, a space in which people can feel comfortable, and that's where having a sort of a neutral, if you like, an external organization come in and work with you on that, and work with employees, can really help, is that buffer. And that's one of the value, I suppose, of investing in workplace counselling, psychotherapy or therapeutic coaching. And what I'd say is that if you're going to go down that route, if all of your work and the sort of the groundwork you've done thinks, well, okay, these are the things that we need in place, whether that's provided through an EAP or whether it's provided through private practitioners who come in and deliver specific bespoke services for a small number of workforces. It has to be what works for you. And if you're an organization who has little understanding or experience of commissioning those kinds of services, reach out to someone like the BACP. We have lots of accredited services on our directory, and accredited services are ones that have met the highest professional and ethical standards in terms of delivering workplace counselling. We have a workplace counselling competencies framework that therapists working in organizations can work to ensure, again, that their practice meets the highest ethical and practice standards. So there is that guidance available there. But of course, the landscape, again, it's vast. If you put a Google search in workplace well-being and counselling, you're going to see a heck of a lot of things. You're going to see, digital online solutions, and it's very difficult to sort of know where to turn. And we can help with that. We can bring that expertise to bear. And when you're working with therapists, it's always important to look to make sure that they're accredited or registered with, a PSA accredited, that's the Professional Standards Authority accredited register. And that gives you, again, that sort of assurance that you're going to be working with somebody who's, safe, practicing ethically and competently, and not acting beyond their competence. And just think about what it is you're investing in, why that investment's necessary, and what return you expect to see that. What will success look like for you? Is it about reduced absenteeism? Is it about increased productivity? Or is there more to it than that? Are you going to find that your workforce is happier, that they are suddenly more creative, perhaps, as a result of having that space and time to talk with somebody about how they're feeling about their work? So I think that's an important thing as well. And people get hung up sometimes, I think, on the data and on the measurements, and try and think about how they can, manage and measure the minutiae detail. But fundamentally, it's about ensuring that people feel more comfortable and happy and committed to their work. And again, there are a range of things that you can do. There's lots of things online that can help you with that without having to outlay a huge amount of money. Of course, the other option is to go with an EAP service. There are many types of them out there. Again, we have lots on our accredited services directory, but also lots of organizational members as well that are delivering services to a range of public, private, and third sector organizations. And they'll all have particular strengths. So it might be, for example, that you're looking for therapists or a service that understands your sector. It might be, for example, you're in the farming sector or retail or the rail sector, and the chances are you will find an organization or therapists that have specific expertise in that area. For example, if you're looking for trauma-informed therapists, again, you can search for those on our database, on our therapist directory, or our accredited services or organizational members as well. And to give that, again, that sort of quality assurance. But yeah, I would say that another thing is really key. I think is to make sure that whatever you're investing in is backed up in some way, articulated within a strategy. A clear strategy where you've laid out what it is the organization needs, why you're investing in this, and what again you're expecting to see in terms of a measurement and an action plan, as well, just to ensure that you're all pulling towards those goals, and whether or not you're having an impact. Quite often I've seen organizations that will go out, and I've spoken to large, multinational, blue chip, global organizations. I've worked with, SMEs with literally a handful of employees. And, quite a lot of them have said to me, well, we've invested X amount, some millions in this particular initiative, and we're not really sure what we're getting back for it. And now, whether your turnovers in the millions or whether it's, in the thousands, it's really important, particularly in this climate, to make those, investment decisions wisely, or as wisely as you possibly can. Again, to ensure that you're getting value for money, but also that that your employees feel as though you're doing the right thing. Because if you're not, of course, they'll soon tell you, or they'll show it.